The year is 447 AD. It is the middle of the night, and suddenly the ground shakes with such ferocity that the entire city's walls collapse within moments. It is not only the walls. Approximately 50 or more buildings have also been reduced to piles of rubble. The city's mighty shield, once considered unbreakable by any enemy, now appears as nothing more than a heap of fallen stones. And the greatest problem is that merely a few kilometers away, an enemy stands fully prepared for war. A figure whom history knows as Attila the Hun. Yet, amidst this atmosphere of fear and devastation, this city accomplished such a feat that, to this day, it is regarded by the world as nothing less than a masterpiece. Upon beholding these grand and towering walls, one cannot help but wonder, even today, how was such an immense wall completed in merely 60 days? On this journey, we shall make stops at 6 distinct locations. With the assistance of AI, we shall travel back to that ancient era of construction, witness those very moments, and understand how these walls were built. By the conclusion of this video, you will clearly understand what the true reason behind Constantinople's greatness was, and why this city remained unconquerable to its enemies for centuries. Location 1. The year is 413 AD. We stand at the western edge of Constantinople, what is today the Fatih district of Istanbul, where in the morning mist, the echoes of thousands of laborers' toil can be heard. This was not merely a construction site, rather the very confidence of an entire city was being built here. The mind behind this massive project was Anthemius, for the emperor of that time, Theodosius II, was merely a child of 12 years. His plan was so bold that the world had never before witnessed walls of such magnitude. These walls were no ordinary barrier, but rather a 6-kilometer long layered defense system stretching from the Sea of Marmara to the Golden Horn. First, a trench 20 meters wide and 5 meters deep was dug, which was then filled with water, so that the enemy could not even reach the wall directly. Beyond that stood an outer wall, shorter in height yet sufficiently strong to impede the enemy. However, the true strength lay in the inner wall, standing 11 meters tall. Along the entire length, towers were constructed from which arrows, heavy stones, and the terrifying Greek fire could be deployed. The construction of these walls involved not only skilled workers but also slaves, and those individuals who labored day and night to pay off their taxes. These walls demonstrate that the glory of any city is, in truth, built upon the arduous labor of thousands of nameless individuals. These walls protected Constantinople from every threat for the next 1,000 years. Until the Ottomans deployed their heavy cannons in 1453, no army was able to breach these defenses. Even today, when you observe these ancient bricks and ruins stretching from Yedikule to Ayvansaray in Istanbul, their weight and their history can be deeply felt. These walls were once a source of hope for the people, and today they have become a profound reminder of history. And to enter the city, there were not only walls but also grand gates, among which the most renowned is the Golden Gate. Location 2. The Golden Gate. The year is 420 AD. We stand at the southwest corner of Constantinople, where the city walls are nearly complete, yet one gate continues to command everyone's attention. This was no ordinary doorway. It was constructed for an extraordinary purpose. Among its 3 arches, the largest was reserved exclusively for the emperor, and it was adorned with gleaming gold leaf, which is why it was called Porta Aurea, or the Golden Gate. We have now arrived in the year 630 AD, when Heraclius defeated the Persians and is now passing through the Golden Gate. Whenever an emperor returned victorious from war, the spectacle was truly something to behold. The emperor in his chariot, his army behind him and ahead of them, celebrating musicians and a jubilant public. Sources indicate that atop this gate there may have been a statue of an elephant, which, even from a great distance, would have conveyed the might of the Byzantine Empire. This architecture was not merely for display, it carried a profound message. We do not merely defend ourselves, we conquer the world. Today this gate is part of Yedikule, the fortress of 7 towers, and has been permanently sealed. However, an interesting observation is that if you visit there today and place your hand upon those ancient walls, the stones feel warm to the touch. Perhaps this is merely due to the sunlight, or perhaps it is the warmth of centuries-old memories that remain imprisoned within those stones. The gate that was once a symbol of grandeur and triumph has today become nothing more than a silent, sealed memory, one that only our imagination can reopen. The Golden Gate was a place of celebration. But which was the real military gate? The real work took place at other gates, where armies marched through, where real blood was shed. And among these, the most important was the Gate of St. Romanus. Location 3. The Gate of St. Romanus. The construction of Constantinople's famous Theodosian Walls is at its peak. At a particular point along these walls, a great gateway has been erected. The Gate of St. Romanus, known today as Topkapi. Around this gate, the number of towers is greater and the guard presence is heavier, for this was no ordinary location. It was situated near the Lycus Valley, where the terrain dips slightly, making it easier for an enemy to launch an attack from this point. The Romans understood that their strongest defense could also become their weakest point, and therefore additional protective measures were implemented here. However, the true story of this gate was destined to be written 1,000 years later in 1453. When Sultan Mehmed II launched his assault upon the city, his massive cannons targeted this very Romanus gate. As the wall began to crumble, it was at this very spot that the Byzantine Emperor Constantine XI fell, fighting to his very last breath. In 413 AD, the gate that once symbolized hope and new beginnings, where the bells of temples rang with the first rays of morning light and guards changed their duty. That same place, centuries later, would alter the course of history. Today, that very Romanus gate is a busy traffic junction. Trams pass through there. Tourists study their maps and people walk by without giving it a second thought. Yet beneath those roads and pathways, the traces of the ancient walls remain buried, reminding us that engineering has its limits, and that time changes everything. Location 4. The Carausius Gate before us stands a magnificent gateway known as the Carausius Gate. The story of this gate is not merely one of stones and bricks, but of the people who lived in its shadow. At that time, the threat approaching from the northwest, whether it be the Bulgars, the Slavs, or large barbarian confederations, weighed constantly upon people's minds. As a result of this fear, the towers on both sides of this gate were made considerably stronger and more formidable than ordinary towers. However, the life of this gate was not confined solely to war and fear. In the cool morning breeze, when the gate opened for the first time, an entirely different world would reveal itself. Records indicate that, over time, a small marketplace developed here. The reason for this was quite fascinating. Whenever armies departed from or returned through this gate, they required rations and supplies. Where soldiers were present, money followed, and where money existed, merchants were naturally drawn to the location. One can imagine how merchants would stand with their goods loaded upon donkeys, behind them farmers carrying their produce, and guards meticulously scrutinizing every face to ensure no suspicious individual entered the city. With the passage of time, this very Carausius Gate came to be known as Edirne-Capi, because the road from here led directly to Edirne, the ancient Adrianople. In the present day, if you were to visit there, you would likely not see the old gate, for it has nearly vanished entirely. However, its spirit remains alive in the Edirne-Capi neighborhood of today. There are now mosques, shops, and old apartment buildings at that location. Yet the most astonishing thing is that, upon careful observation, one realizes that the back wall of an old house is, in fact, the very same centuries-old Roman fortification. Location 5. The Gate of Rhegium. We stand at the southwestern section of Constantinople. The cool winds from the Sea of Marmara are blowing, and before us stands a great gateway, the Gate of Rhegium. This gate may not have been the most glamorous or magnificent in appearance, yet it was the true lifeline of the city. It was named after an ancient Greek settlement called Rhegion, and the Ottomans later renamed it the Mevlevihinna Gate. In the era of 413 AD, this gate served as the most significant hub for both trade and military operations. Why? Because the famous Via Egnatia Highway passed through here, a legendary Roman road that connected Constantinople directly to the Adriatic Sea and western provinces such as Italy and Greece. This meant that whatever came from the west passed through this very gateway. The atmosphere here was exceedingly busy and bustling. At all times, the screeching sounds of cartwheels could be heard, the rhythmic clattering of horse hooves, and the stern interrogation of the guards. Who are you? Where have you come from? What are you carrying? Grain caravans, olive oil, wine, weapons, and messengers all entered the city through this gate, The essential truth is that empires are sustained not by swords alone, but by logistics. One may employ as many brave soldiers as one wishes, but if grain does not arrive to fill their stomachs, the war shall be lost, and that grain came through these very gates. Therefore, without this gate, the survival of Constantinople would have been impossible. Today, if you visit there, the scene has changed entirely. Where long lines of caravans once stood, there are now parking lots. Some traces of the old walls and towers can still be found, yet it has now become a quiet residential area where people peacefully enjoy their evening tea. However, do bear in mind that, alongside the fence, the city was in dire need of one more thing, and that was water, whose story begins at the next gate. The Gate of Page. Location 6. The Gate of Page. We stand at the central southern section of the Theodosian Walls. The walls here are just as strong as anywhere else. Yet there is a distinct freshness and tranquility in the air. The reason for this is a natural spring located here, which the Greeks called Peg, meaning a fountain. It is after this spring that this great gateway was named the Gate of Peg, later known as the Silivri Gate. In the 5th century, this place was not merely a point to stop the enemy. It was considered sacred. Christians believed that the water of this spring possessed healing power. For this reason, a shrine was built here dedicated to the Virgin Mary of the Spring, also known as Theotokos of the Spring, to which the sick, the wounded, and those filled with hope would travel from far and wide. On one side stand massive military walls, guards, and weapons, and directly in their shadow, people kneel in prayer, beseeching for blessings. These two worlds, military might and spiritual devotion, existed side by side. When the gates opened in the early morning, the first to enter were pilgrims, some of whom carried their ailing loved ones upon their shoulders. Guards kept watch over everyone, yet the inspection of those coming to the shrine was not conducted with great strictness, as disturbing them was considered to bring bad fortune. Today, this location is known as Silivri Capi. The walls have aged. Some have collapsed and some have been restored. However, that spring still exists there, now flowing beneath the Balikli Kili. People still visit there to this day, some to pray, and some simply to feel the weight of that centuries-old history. And thus, we stand at the end of our journey. We have witnessed how, in the 5th century, when much of Europe was drowning in chaos, Constantinople erected around itself a wall that was not merely a barrier of stone, but one that wrote history. And indeed, it did write history. For more than 1,000 years, until the technology of warfare changed entirely, these walls fulfilled their purpose completely. And today, when you walk alongside these walls in Istanbul, perhaps you might pause for a moment and reflect. Here, in the 5th century, who stood? What was their name? Where was their family? As they placed this stone, what thoughts were passing through their mind? History is not merely dates and famous names. History continues to astonish us in precisely this manner. Do let us know in the comments. Which moment of this entire documentary did you find most compelling?